Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna. You're watching A News. Let's see the top stories for the hour. The manhunt for the shooter that killed Conservative activist and Trump ally Charlie Kirk is underway, with the FBI offering a reward for information. Following Russian drones entering Polish airspace, Prime Minister Donald Tusk has called on NATO to take the threat seriously. Belarus frees 52 prisoners after Trump appeal, with the US easing some sanctions on Minsk. The FBI has released photos of a person of interest in the fatal shooting of Conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Investigators said the suspect climbed onto a rooftop at Utah Valley University before firing the fatal shot, then jumped off and fled into a nearby neighbourhood. A rifle, ammunition and trace evidence were later found in a wooded area close to the scene. The FBI has offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. Kirk, a 31-year-old Trump ally, was shot and killed on Wednesday while speaking at a university in Utah. The incident has sparked strong reactions across the political spectrum, with responses continuing to pour in.
Panic erupted at Utah Valley University on Wednesday, 10th September, when a single gunshot turned a public speaking event into a scene of horror. 31-year-old Charlie Kirk, a conservative commentator and one of President Donald Trump's closest allies, was struck fatally in the neck while addressing students.
Oh my God.
The Utah event was the opening night of Kirk's American Comeback Tour, a 15-campus series designed to spark debate among young Americans. At Utah Valley University, however, it became his final appearance.
Basically, I just heard a shot, and I saw him falling towards the left, so I knew he got shot on the collarbone or the neck right here, but I didn't see bleed immediately. I just saw and I heard, and we all crouched down.
It's traumatizing for the students. When I saw students running off from the campus over the bridge there, a lot of them were crying. It was traumatizing for everyone, and now the campus is closed.
Kirk was rushed from the scene as terrified spectators ducked for cover. Some even jumped into a fountain. Emergency crews and SWAT teams responded quickly.
Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
Former Presidents Barack Obama and Joe Biden, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and international leaders also condemned the attack. Charlie Kirk was a polarizing figure. On campuses and across social media, he divided opinion sharply. To supporters, he was a fearless defender of free speech, conservative values, and Donald Trump's vision for America. To critics, he was a provocateur, accused of fueling division and promoting a confrontational political agenda. Kirk rose from a suburban Chicago childhood to become founder of Turning Point USA, a conservative youth movement that reshaped campus politics and played a key role in Trump's 2024 election campaign.
Politically motivated attacks across the United States are shaking communities, from deadly home invasions to violent protests at the Capitol. Let's take a look at some of the most prominent acts of political violence in recent US history.
In the United States, a series of politically motivated attacks in recent years has raised concerns over growing polarization and extremism. From plots against governors to violent assaults on lawmakers, the incidents point to a troubling trend.
Earlier today, Attorney General Dana Nessel was joined by officials from the Department of Justice and the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups who were preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
In January 2021, supporters of then-President Donald Trump stormed the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to block the certification of the presidential election results. On 28 October 2022, Paul Pelosi, husband of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, was attacked at their San Francisco home by an intruder wielding a hammer. Authorities said the suspect was politically motivated and searching for Nancy Pelosi herself. A year later, in Illinois, 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy Wadea Al-Fayoume was fatally stabbed in what police described as a hate crime. On 13 July 2024, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump survived an assassination attempt during a campaign rally. In May 2025, 2 Israeli embassy staff were shot dead at the Capitol Museum in Washington, D.C. Only weeks later, Minnesota Democratic leader and former State Assembly Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were fatally shot at their home.
Ukraine's Kyiv saw several high-profile visits on Friday as Britain's Prince Harry, Poland's Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski and new UK Foreign Minister Yvette Cooper all arrived in the Ukrainian capital. Prince Harry came with his Invictus Games Foundation team to present rehabilitation programs for wounded Ukrainian soldiers. It is his second visit to Ukraine this year, and he's also due to meet Prime Minister Yulia Svyridenko. Sikorski's trip came after Russian drones violated Polish airspace, with talks set to focus on shared security and Ukraine's NATO and EU aspirations. Meanwhile, Cooper used her visit to announce a fresh package of UK sanctions on Russia, targeting oil tankers and suppliers of military components. Belarus has released 52 prisoners after US mediation following a meeting in Minsk between Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko and Donald Trump's envoy. The freed detainees have crossed into Lithuania as Washington eases sanctions on the Belarusian state airline.
Belarus freed 52 prisoners on Thursday following an appeal from US President Donald Trump. According to the American embassy in Vilnius, the group crossed into Lithuania alongside a US delegation that helped negotiate their release. Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda confirmed the transfer, calling it a great diplomatic success, but stressed that more than 1,000 political prisoners remain behind bars in Belarus.
There can be no exchange in this regard, so let's consider this as a certain positive message. Released by the people, and for us, the citizens of Lithuania, it is extremely important.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko told visiting Trump envoy John Cole in Minsk that the pardons included 14 foreign nationals, among them 6 Lithuanians, 2 Latvians, 2 Poles, 2 Germans, 1 French citizen, and 1 from the UK. During the meeting, Cole said Washington was lifting sanctions on Belarus's state airline, Belavia, allowing it to service and purchase Boeing aircraft parts. He also delivered a letter from Trump, signed simply Donald, in which the US President and First Lady Melania extended birthday wishes to Lukashenko. As a gift, Trump sent cufflinks engraved with the White House. Lukashenko, a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, thanked Trump for what he called his remarkable efforts for peace and signaled willingness to pursue further agreements on prisoner releases. Despite the breakthrough, the release falls far short of the more than 1,300 detainees Trump has previously urged Lukashenko to free.
Poland has closed all border crossings with Belarus over security concerns linked to the Russian-Belarusian Zapad 2025 drills, which began on Friday. The exercises involved tens of thousands of troops. According to Russia's defense ministry, the drills are taking place in both Russia and Belarus, as well as in the Baltic and Barents Seas. They include large-scale land maneuvers and naval drills. In response, Poland has deployed about 40,000 soldiers along its eastern border amid concerns the exercises may rehearse an attack on the Suwalki corridor, the narrow route between Poland and Lithuania, connecting Belarus with Russia's Kaliningrad exclave. The closure of the border crossings followed a major scare on Wednesday when Polish air defences, backed by NATO aircraft, shot down several Russian drones that crossed its airspace. Prime Minister Donald Tusk said 19 drones were detected, with wreckage scattered across the countryside.
Following Russian drones entering Polish airspace, Polish Prime Minister has called on NATO to take the threat seriously, while European allies pledge support and Poland strengthens cooperation with Ukraine on counter-drone defence. After a National Security Council meeting on Thursday, he insisted Russia was responsible and urged NATO not to pretend nothing happened.
We don't think Russia is behind this provocation. We know it. However, I also understand that for all those who would like some kind of normalization, stabilization, some kind of policy of understanding with Russia, this situation is very uncomfortable. Because if what happened in the Polish skies on the night of September 10th is happening, it's hard to pretend that nothing happened. I hope that none of our allies will pretend that nothing happened, because it did happen.
Polish President Karol Nawrocki spoke with US President Donald Trump. Warsaw said NATO commitments were reaffirmed, though Trump suggested the incident might have been accidental.
Could have been a mistake. Could have been a mistake. But regardless, I'm not happy about anything having to do with that whole situation. But hopefully it's going to come to an end.
European leaders voiced strong support. France pledged 3 Rafale jets. Germany promised to step up NATO air policing and push for tougher EU sanctions. And Britain said it stood absolutely firm with Poland. The Netherlands and Czech Republic offered air defences, while EU Chief Kaja Kallas vowed to ramp up sanctions. Polish Prime Minister also confirmed backing from Sweden. In Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelensky said Polish officers will undergo training in Ukraine on counter-drone warfare, calling the strikes a test of NATO's resolve. Russia denied responsibility, while Belarus claimed the drones may have strayed due to jamming. Warsaw rejected that, saying the threat was real and vowing to defend both its borders and NATO's eastern flank.
Welcome back to A News. Belarus freed 52 prisoners of various nationalities, including an EU employee, on Thursday after an appeal from US President Donald Trump, and they headed to Lithuania with the US delegation that negotiated their release. In return for Lukashenko's gesture, Washington will grant sanctions relief to Belarus national airline Belavia, allowing it to service and buy components for its aircraft, which includes Boeings. And joining us now with more on the topic of the US-Belarus relations is Enrique Cosero, political analyst from Madrid, Spain. Enrique, welcome to the program today.
Thank you.
Now, was this diplomatic move by the US a spontaneous response to extraordinary circumstances, or was it the result of long-term planning and preparation?
A little bit of both. We have to consider that Donald Trump is not being what we can call hard on Russia, which means he's not going to be hard on Belarus, because the State Union, this alliance that Russia and Belarus had, they have together. It's sort of this kind of pal relationship between countries. So right now it could be a little bit of both. Belarus, Minsk, Lukashenko, they know that there is no way that any country can survive without a main airline. Mm-hmm. And Belavia was suffering a lot, and not only suffering a lot because of the restraining, but because they can't change or fix the planes with new pieces. And at that point, we can say that for Belavia, the United States had the monopoly of their airplanes.
And so what do you think were the main factors behind the US decision to lift sanctions on the Belarusian national airline Belavia?
I think Trump wants to be really, really cautious in this situation with Russia. We've seen what happened with the drones over Poland on the beginning of the week. We are watching right now the army exercises that Russia and Belarus are displaying in order to train the staff and the commanding staff in a case of in case of an invasion, and how to recover terrain, which means that Russia is not having, and especially Belarus, they're not having all the odds in their hand, considering that Ukraine has been shown as a probably is not as big as Russia. Probably Ukraine got not the same dimension of the army and than Russia, but they can reach territory. So if they have reached territory in Russia, they can do the same thing in Belarus. So I think Belarus is sort of the weakest piece in all this puzzle. And if I were Lukashenko, if I were a politician in Minsk, I would rather to have sort of safety net in order to avoid any other attack.
And how should this decision be interpreted in the context of the recent Russian drone incident in Poland?
Oh, this is a question of lots of opinions and lots of declarations from especially from the Russian politicians. I stick to the Donald Tusk's opinion.
Welcome back to A News. Now we'll take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Russia has shut down a secretive presidential directorate once charged with keeping former Soviet republics in Moscow's orbit. The closure follows a stream of leaks exposing espionage, corruption and dwindling influence. A report by The Insider reveals the scale of the operations and the money involved.
Russia's Presidential Directorate for Interregional and Cultural Ties with Foreign Countries was set up in 2005 after Ukraine's Orange Revolution. Its official aim was cultural cooperation. In practice, insiders say it was a hub for intelligence and influence missions across Eastern Europe, the Caucasus and Central Asia. Leadership often came from the spy world. Early head Modest Kolarov had a background in political strategy and covert work. He was followed by figures like Nikolai Svetkov, Vladimir Chernov, Sergei Vinokurov, all linked to Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR. Funding was on a massive scale. Internal papers seen by investigative outlet The Insider show hundreds of millions of dollars channeled over 2 decades. More than 100 million went to Azerbaijan alone for festivals, exhibitions, and media projects. Annual spending on Central Asia reached at least $50 million, with Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan named as priority targets. The methods were equally striking. Reports list at least 136 journalists and bloggers classified as agents of influence, some marked ours or ready to cooperate. Budgets covered media outlets, youth movements, and even banquets described by staff as drinking sessions. Results were mixed at best. In Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, military cooperation with Russia shrank sharply after 2022. Turkmenistan increased defense spending and signed new security deals beyond Moscow's reach. In Azerbaijan, where expensive events were meant to showcase partnership, relations cooled and Russian media such as Sputnik faced restrictions. By early 2025, as Russia's war in Ukraine drained resources and credibility, President Vladimir Putin ordered the directorate to be scrapped. Its tasks are now being folded into a new directorate for strategic partnership and cooperation under domestic policy chief Sergei Kirienko. Officials have 3 months to complete the handover, with key figures tied to past scandals barred from the new structure. The decision ends a 20-year experiment in covert cultural diplomacy that cost Russia hundreds of millions of dollars, delivered few allies, and exposed how the Kremlin's soft power ambitions often masked old-style espionage.
Armenia's Parliament Speaker Alan Simonyan says economic ties and infrastructure are now central to the post-peace agenda with Azerbaijan. He signals a shift toward practical cooperation after years of regional tension.
Armenian Parliament Speaker Alan Simonyan has shared thoughts on future cooperation with Azerbaijan following the recent peace declaration signed in Washington. Speaking to journalists, Simonyan said it is understandable that Azerbaijan wants to avoid any future threats. He added that Armenia also has clear priorities, especially when it comes to unblocking regional transport and communication links.
In a very short period of time, Armenians and Azerbaijanis will be trading with each other, and we will have a common market of Armenian and Azerbaijani goods. Azerbaijani products will appear in our shops, while Armenian goods will be found in shops in Baku and other cities. It's inevitable. Armenians will go to buy cheaper petrol and come back.
Simonyan highlighted the importance of the so-called Trump route, a section of the Zangezur corridor that will run through Armenia. He suggested that Armenian companies could help build the railway and energy infrastructure along this route. He also said a joint Armenian-American organization will be responsible for managing these projects. Simonyan also addressed Armenia's security ties. He confirmed that Armenia is not planning to remove the Russian military base from its territory. According to him, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan will travel to Russia soon and is expected to meet President Vladimir Putin. Recently, Armenian and Azerbaijani deputy prime ministers met in border areas last week. They discussed border delimitation, mine clearance and plans for rebuilding infrastructure. These efforts aim to support the peace deal signed in August, which was mediated by US President Donald Trump.
Georgia is facing mounting questions over its foreign policy direction. While its neighbours deepen ties with both Washington and Beijing, Tbilisi's growing partnership with China is drawing criticism from Western allies. It all comes against the backdrop of fresh tensions between Georgia and the EU. Our correspondent has more.
Tbilisi Mayor Kaha Kaladze has defended Georgia's deepening cooperation with China, calling it a strategic and economic necessity. He answered to critics, saying that closer ties are welcomed, noting that engagement with Beijing is a broader regional trend rather than a Georgian exception. That point is supported by recent moves from Georgia's neighbors. Both Azerbaijan and Armenia have expanded their relationships with China in recent months, while at the same time signing historic agreements in the United States. Washington has praised those steps as a progress toward regional stability, leaving some in Tbilisi asking why Georgia's outreach to China is viewed so differently. One possible answer lies on the Black Sea coast. The planned Anaklia deep-sea port is seen as strategically vital, and reports suggest a US-sanctioned Chinese company could be among the potential investors. That prospect has raised concern in Washington and Brussels, where the focus is less on trade and more on long-term security implications. This issue was even the subject of a hearing today at the US Helsinki Commission, pointedly titled "From Partner to Problem: Georgia's Anti-American Detour." The debate also comes amid wider diplomatic strain. Georgia has rejected criticism from European partners, most recently in a dispute with German ambassador in Tbilisi. Berlin defended its envoy and warned that aggressive rhetoric could damage relations, adding another layer of tension to Georgia's foreign policy landscape. Kaladze's message was clear. Georgia values its partnership with China and will continue on that path. But the country now faces the delicate task of balancing these ties with the expectations of its Western allies. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
Kazakhstan plans to launch the Turkundi-Herat railway line in Afghanistan by 2026-27. The Deputy Transport Minister Maksat Kalyakparov announced at the government meeting. The 120-kilometre project will enable Kazakhstan to expand exports and transit to Afghanistan with access to the markets of Pakistan and India. while offering Afghanistan greater trade opportunities via the Middle Corridor. A logistics company will also be established in Herat, and a fibre optic cable will be laid along the route to enhance digital infrastructure. Earlier this year, Afghan officials said Astana was ready to invest around $500 million in the construction. The United Nations has launched a 4-month emergency response plan for Afghanistan worth $140 million to assist nearly 500,000 people affected by the recent devastating earthquake. Our Tamim Bahis has more on that in Kabul.
The earthquake struck Kunar, Laghman and Nangarhar provinces with a magnitude above 6, followed by 3 strong aftershocks. More than 2,200 people lost their lives and around 3,600 were injured. Over 6,700 homes were either destroyed or damaged, leaving thousands of families displaced in unsafe and makeshift shelters. Many households also lost their food supplies and now face limited access to clean water, health services and sanitation. Schools, clinics and essential infrastructure were also badly affected. The United Nations emergency plan aims to reach 457,000 people by the end of the year. Relief operations have already begun, with humanitarian organizations and local authorities delivering food, tents, blankets, warm clothing and clean water. Mobile health and nutrition teams are being deployed along with medical supplies to the worst hit areas. Humanitarian partners are focusing on the needs of vulnerable groups, including women and children, while also preparing communities in high-altitude areas for the winter season. The plan includes shelter support, water and sanitation, food assistance, protection services, education, and agriculture and livestock aid to help safeguard lives and livelihoods. The United Nations is calling for urgent international support to ensure families impacted by the earthquake receives life-saving assistance before winter sets in. Tamim Bahis reporting for A News from Kabul, Afghanistan.
Over in Turkey, international credit rating agency Fitch has raised the country's economic growth forecast for 2025 from 2.9 to 3.5%. Growth is expected to stay steady in the next year and climb to 4.2% by 2027. Fitch expects Turkey's inflation to drop to 28% by the end of this year and continue falling to 21% in 2026 and 19% by 2027. The central bank is also expected to ease monetary policy. Over the past few days, diplomatic traffic has intensified, with high-ranking officials from Turkey and the US visiting Azerbaijan and Armenia, and some analysts foreseeing tangible changes in the near future. As part of his 2-day visit to Armenia, Brendan Hanrahan of the US State Department's Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs, after his meeting with Armenia's Deputy Prime Minister Mir Grigoryan, stated that the US is now planning to allocate $145 million for the implementation of the 8th August agreement between Baku and Yerevan, witnessed by President Trump on the opening of a transit route to connect Azerbaijan's mainland with Nakhchivan via Armenia. As part of the original arrangement, which is now being fleshed out through bilateral US-Armenia contacts and consultations with Azerbaijan, Yerevan agreed to give exclusive rights to the US in connection with what is also known as the Zangezur Corridor. Hanran also noted that his department was working with Congress and the plan to provide $145 million in assistance for Armenia marks the first major step toward making TRIP a reality. The Armenian readout of the meeting placed particular emphasis on the planned US funding for investments in trade, infrastructure, critical minerals supply chains and cross-border security. Earlier in the month, the Armenian Prime Minister stated that no fixed agreement had yet been attained toward the completion of TRIP. So against the backdrop of this evolving development, Serdar Kılıç, Turkey's special representative for the normalization of Armenian-Turkish relations, is paying a visit to Yerevan to meet his Armenian vis-a-vis Ruben Rubinyan. With more on the subject, we're now joined live by Professor Dr. Ashfaq Ahmed. He's the Chairman, Department of Politics and International Relations at the University of Sargodha, Punjab, Pakistan. Professor, welcome to the program. Now, a lot is happening and we have to make sense of what's going on here. How interconnected are these two trips?
Thank you so much for having me, and it's always a pleasure to be with you. As far as these two trips are concerned, we should first of all look at the Trump route. For instance, you have already talked about the 145 million pledge made by the Trump administration, or Trump, to invest in the infrastructure, railway projects, and other critical minerals and other issues in this particular project. So the point is that we can consider that this is a masterstroke which has been played by President Donald Trump, because he will not only have a present, he will ensure America's long presence in the region. Moreover, he will also be challenging the status quo of the region. For instance, the region is considered to be under the Russian influence, or it's considered to be the Russian sphere of influence. So Russian sphere of influence will be having American entry, a direct American entry. That's the one point. The second point is that the region is also considered to be, and Armenia is also considered to be, Iranian ally or Iranian friend. So the point is that because of this particular presence, American president will also ensure that Iranian influence in the region is also reduced. So the next point is that if this is the scenario, then and if, let's suppose, this particular corridor or the Trump route is for peace and international peace and prosperity is implemented in that particular scenario, Iranians will be bypassed in this particular route, and Iranians will be losing 20 to 30% of their transit revenues. So that is the issue with this particular agreement. Okay, now, how consequential is this moment, Professor, when the US official has specifically named the figure of $145 million? And how significant is it, given that this is not about wider connectivity, not about Prime Minister Pashinyan's Crossroads of Peace initiative, but very specifically about TRIP? So as I stated earlier, that it is a strategic masterstroke. You should also recall Trump administration, when he first came to power, he issued a national security strategy. In that particular strategy, his administration labeled Russia as an imminent threat to U.S. national security. And if you go back to 2003, when President Bush Jr. was in the presidency or in the White House, he also labeled Iran as an axis of evil, one of the axis of evil. So the point is that if, let's suppose, this particular 145 million pledge is made, Americans, they will be having this particular route for the next 99 years. It will be leased, of course, but the point is that Pashinyan has not so far fixated the terms of the lease. So again, so the point is that the dominance of Russia and the Iranian, that is going to be replaced by the American presidents. So this is the overall situation that I see here.
Okay, and in addition, we've also seen Sardar Kılıç in Armenia. Do you think the implementation of the TRIP project will accelerate the opening of the Turkish-Armenian border?
As far as Kılıç presence in Armenia is concerned, you should recall the development which took place back in March, when Armenia and Turkey, they normalized their border opening. So the point is that if, let's suppose, both these countries, they are going to normalize their relation, or they open their borders, it will give a greater connectivity. Not only it will enable Turkey to directly connect with through Armenia to be connected with the Azerbaijan, but also, Central Asian republics. They will also be able to be connected with Turkey, and they can also reach European markets or Europe as well. And if we look at this particular normalization of relation, Turkey side, it stated that they are going to normalize the relation, or they are going to open the borders. But at the same time, since Azerbaijan is also present in the region, Armenia should also should allow or should include in Azerbaijan in this entire scenario. So if this particular this development is matured in that particular scenario, we will see that the overall region will be stabilized. And moreover, this particular development is also aligned with the Azerbaijan goal to convert this whole region into international economic transit hub. So this is the overall development which is going to take place, and moreover, and moreover, the overall region that is going to be stabilized. Not only Armenia is going to get benefit of this particular development, but also Azerbaijan is also going to get profit from this. And as far as the international trade is concerned, World Bank estimates that if this is mature, this particular deal is mature, then $50 to $100 billion annual trade will increase by 2027. And moreover, if you talk about Oxford Economics, they also talk about $20 to $30 billion transit costs will also be reduced. However, there's another issue, and that is the overall cost of this particular project, which is estimated to be $3 to $5 billion. Look at $145 million. It's a minimal amount. We need more amount to mature this particular route.
And Professor, do you expect that the Turkish-Armenia border to be opened for third-party nationals or for diplomatic passport holders?
As I said earlier, that Azerbaijan also wants this particular this particular development to be mature. Azerbaijan would like that this particular route is open for third party, and Armenia would also like that this particular route is also open for the third party. Why? Because it will increase the tourism in the region. So Central Asian republics, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Europe, these regions, they will be interconnected. I see, and I hope that this particular trade route will be open for a third party holder, the passport holder.
Okay, and Professor, my last question to you. Could this border, in your view, be fully opened even prior to the full signing of the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace agreement, which, as you know, has so far only been initialed?
Look, if you look at the part which has been completed so far in Azerbaijan, that is, if I'm not wrong, by August. In July, it was 62% of the part was completed. But at the moment, perhaps it has further, matured. So the point is that it will take some time. It will take some time to be operationalized, and it is not only highways. The overall project include railways. It also include the infrastructure, and moreover, so these are the issues which you should take into consideration. And the overall cost, which I stated earlier, is $3 to $5 billion. We need more money to put in order to mature this particular route, or the Trump route for international peace and security. So both the Armenian and Azerbaijan peace process on one hand, and a TRIP, or the Trump route for international peace and prosperity, they go in parallel. Let's wait and let's see what is going to happen next.
Okay. Professor Ashfaq, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.
You're up to date with world news for the hour. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.